Let's look at the graph editor first. So under Windows, Animation Editors, open up the graph editor. Now select your candle, and when you select it, you'll see something show up in your graph editor, which looks like a curve. So what this is a graph of how a selected object is actually animating, and it's a great way to get sense of the flow of your animation. And you can navigate the graph editor using very similar controls as you do with the viewport. So you can move by hitting W, you can select keyframes and actually move them around. And I'm gonna undo this and move this out of the way so you can see how I'm actually editing the keyframe for my candlestick. So for example, I can move its rotation key. I'm gonna undo this, and I can play the timeline here, and then I can get a sense of the flow of my animation. So from this starting point to this next keyframe, you can see that the only thing being affected now is this rotate X transformation, right? And so that's why if I moved this key, I was actually moving its rotation values, and this curve indicates the easing in and out of your animation. And these curves can actually be reshaped. So you can select these tangents and make the easing in and out maybe more exaggerated, for example. So now it's bouncing a lot more. Or if I hit undo, Control Z, I could also maybe make it much more abrupt by reshaping this entire curve. And to do that, I have these presets on the top. So for example, if I wanted to make this velocity of easing in and out linear, I can select this button and the speed will be more constant this way. I think I like the way that I exaggerated things by moving this tangent around, and I'm going to leave it like this. And the same way you can select another object. For example, let's select a camera. So camera 2 was my turning circular path camera. And again, there's this ease in and out that maybe doesn't make too much sense for the sake of this animation, since it's just going in a circular motion and I want the speed to be constant. So I can select this curve and turn it into a linear curve. And now my camera speed will be constant from the beginning to the end. So you can use the graph editor to kind of go more into detail of the way your keyframes are functioning. Let's look at another window now. Go to Windows and Playblast, but before clicking on it, select the option square to the right of it. And you'll get several options. The Playblast is a tool to help you preview your animation without actually having to render out your scene. So if you don't want to take a long time rendering each frame out and you need this more as a draft in order to see the way your animation is looking like, you can use this Playblast button. And make sure to always open up the options because there's many settings here that we need to look at. So we can select the entire range of our time slider, or we can define a starting and ending time if we only want to see a section of our animation. make sure you're in the correct view that you want to render. So for example, I want to try and render out this circular motion path. And again, I'm going to tell it to actually preview my entire time slider, so my 300 frames. It should do it to the view that I'm on. And the format, you can either make it do separate frames or already compress it into an animation. Leave encoding as is, quality is fine, and the display size will mean the size of your animation, your preview animation. So it can either borrow the settings on your render settings, or you can give it a custom size, or it could take your actual viewport window as a reference. Whichever one you pick, you can still scale things down here. So let's say I wanted a custom size, and I don't want to scale it down because I'm going to predefine here what size I want it to be. So let's say I want to have it 500 by 500 pixels. And then make sure it says save to file and name your movie file. So I'm going to name this as a circular path preview. And then if you have your project correctly set, it should automatically save it to the movies subfolder in your project folder. So let's close this. And once you have everything set up, you can click on Playblast. And to the left, you saw a small preview of the animation. Once it's done, it'll automatically open up your preview.